fourth episode of the SQL Squared podcast, where I am joined by Lee Brownhill. Welcome, Lee.
Hi, El.
It's great to catch up because I know that we've both been on the Finding Data Friends podcast recently.
Yeah.
Great timing. Mine was just released yesterday.
And it was great. By the way.
Oh, thank you. I had Ben and Jess were saying it's one of the most fun ones they've had in a while. It kind of went a little bit off track. I think some raw eggs or something were mentioned.
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't know what happened. But yeah, I kind of want to know what the experience is like for you, because I know your episode hasn't released yet, but it's been recorded.
Yeah, it was great fun. Shock horror, because they're super warm, super welcoming, super friendly. And I've met Jess a few times now at various events. I think most recently at the Redgate Summit London. And I've always been impressed by just how knowledgeable she is, just on the fly. When you can tell that it's genuine knowledge.
Yeah.
And people can just throw questions at Jess, and she has a well thought out, experienced answer every time. But yeah, it was great fun. They were both lovely, both really helpful and friendly and welcoming. So yeah, good times.
Yeah, I had the exact same experience. It was a nice thing to be on. It was kind of good that it was only 15 minutes.
It was one of the attractive things to me, because I'm quite new to podcasting and being on shows such as your own. So it was a nice entry sort of piece to do, because it was such a short episode, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think that's kind of what it's based around, isn't it? They're trying to introduce people to the community. That's the whole point in it.
Yeah, and any show where I can talk about SQL Server and food together, I mean, I'm there, right?
I'm not going to ask you what your favorite food is. We'll leave that for when the Finding Data Friends podcast comes out. I suppose what did you enjoy most about being on the show?
So the thing which, obviously data and food together, it's a match made in heaven. And it's the first public thing I've done in that kind of thing. So it was very much a learning curve and pushing myself out of my comfort zones and things like that. So it was, just great fun. And like I said, I have a relationship of sorts with Jess anyway. I've met her a few times now at various events around the UK, and always respected her work regarding DBA tool side of things. So to actually get to do something like that with both Ben and Jess, great fun. Really enjoyed it.
I hope to have them on this podcast one day.
That'd be amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen. I haven't gone and kind of talked to them in person at conferences, but I've been to their talks and stuff, and I know that both of them speak, in a lot of depth, and they know what they're doing.
For sure. I'm not so up on Ben's presentations, because I haven't been to any events that he's actually been into the UK yet, but I have seen his stuff online, and always good times with Ben.
Yeah, he makes it fun.
Yeah, very much so.
Right. Well, one of the, obviously, SQL Squared podcast focused on the guest, focused on you. Your name's in the title. It'll be on the thumbnail as well. I kind of want to know a little bit about your career. I know, you've been in this line of work for quite a long time. Can you tell me a little bit about your career journey and kind of what sparked your interest in data in the first place?
Of course, yeah. So many moons ago, more years than I'd care to admit at this point, I started off in a general sort of IT support role. Classic sort of entry point into the IT world, tech world, etc. So jack of all trades, pretty much master of none. And the business I was with at my very first sort of proper IT job, they migrated from a Unix-based ERP system to Dynamics NAV at the time, which is obviously powered by back-end SQL Server. And I got really interested in that particular server, and it was like this scary magic box to me and most other people in the business. So I started to look into that magic box, essentially. And the more I worked with that SQL Server, the more I knew I wanted to actually just do that rather than all the other parts of my job, because I've never had much interest in various aspects of IT, but the one thing I have always had an interest in is the data, and specifically SQL Server. So after a lot of training on my own part, I eventually got a production DBA job at a SaaS company. So traditional DBA job, keeping the lights on, keeping things running, making sure your backups are in good state of play and things like that. And then fast forward several years, I ultimately ended up as a kind of a mixed role, like a developer-DBA kind of role. So I was working on a hybrid sort of small team, all centered around making that particular application scale. Because originally it was quite a small customer base, and that company got purchased by a much larger US version, and all of a sudden we had to make that database and that product scale to the kind of scale that Fortune 100 customers put on it, which is times 10 difference really. So that was one of my most favorite roles in hindsight, because that's where I learned the most, because I had to almost become the glue between developers and your infrastructure DBAs, and get them speaking together in the same language almost, because they're obviously coming from very different areas in terms of their priorities, their wants, their needs. So acting as the conduit between those two teams was actually really challenging, but really fun as well, because we had to do some drastic work on that product to actually get it to scale.
I think you find similar stories in a lot of companies that have much smaller teams.
Yeah.
My experience is mostly with small teams as well. And you learn a lot in those environments, because you need to pick up a lot, and you need to be a hybrid role. Like you don't have the people to take the individual roles and move that forward. You have to all work together and all muck in.
Exactly that, yeah.
And it's a great environment to be in.
It was just one of those really challenging, but in hindsight, rewarding roles, because I had to, just really get the differing teams all working towards the same goal, which was all about scale, right? So that could range from holding sort of show and tell discussions and sessions between the more junior devs about what we need to stop doing within code, which doesn't scale, from that sort of thing, to more complex things about general architecture and how we need to actually look into things. And we actually ended up moving to one of your favorite topics that I know from the Finding Data Friends, which was managed instances. We actually moved to managed instances for that particular task. So that came with its own challenges and benefits also as well. But yeah, it was a really rewarding time. And now, up until more recent experience, now I work as more of a consultant / DBA. So we advise and help our clients to get the most out of their workloads within Azure and AWS. And that's really been rewarding from my point of view, because I've suddenly got hands-on experience with AWS, which was always a bit of a mission on my experience, so to speak. I'd never actually worked. It had all been within Azure up until this point.
How do you find AWS compared to Azure?
It's got its benefits and its negatives compared to Azure, in my opinion. There are things it does better. There are things that it does not so great as Azure, in my opinion. But again, it's the right tool for the right job at the right time, right?
Yeah.
But now I'm in my current role. I'm surrounded by real seasoned experts of the field in my current role. So it's quite humbling and exciting times for me, because I'm constantly learning new things. And there's plenty to do always. So good times. I'm really enjoying it.
That's good. I suppose as more of kind of a DBA consultant, I can imagine that you're very focused on performance and efficiency and getting the most out of the least amount of money. Let's put it
exactly that way. Right. Exactly, because there are always budgets to adhere to. It's not just a case of turning sliders up indefinitely. These businesses have to remain, efficient in every sense of the way. So we're there to guide them and help them through that journey, because some are new to the cloud. Some are been there for a while, but need that extra expertise to actually understand how to get the most of their cloud environments and things like that. So It's real fun, real challenging, and every day is different at the moment. So it's really, really exciting.
Amazing. Yeah, sounds exciting.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, how I'd love to just turn the knob up to the max and then just leave it there and not have to worry about the cost.
Yeah,
especially in the cloud. All right, thanks for that. No, that was a really good insight. Extensive career, extensive expertise, but it's always good to, even after you've got, was it 15 plus years?
Somewhere around that. We don't like to talk about numbers too much, David. But yes, I've worn many different hats
20.
around SQL Server now. So
yes,
I feel like I've got some good experience to actually start giving back to the community, which I'm very keen on doing this year.
Yeah, and constantly learning as well. Still,
exactly.
Really
and the day I stop. The day I'm in a position where I'm not learning is quite troublesome for me and quite demotivating, because I don't like. I've always had this thing about I never want to be the smartest person in the room about a topic, right? Because there's just no growth there at all ever. And the second I do find myself in that situation, I will instantly make myself uncomfortable by going into a situation where I'm surrounded by very intelligent, very clever, very seasoned experts, and that's where I'm at my best, I think.
If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Exactly right. Exactly.
I've been working on recently. A mentor of mine was saying to create a bit of a T-shaped skill profile.
Yes. Yeah.
Make sure that you've got a foundational amount of knowledge and expertise over a large range of things.
Yeah.
But make sure then you focus on a small subset of that and become an expert in that field. And kind of that's how it's one of the main ways people become quite successful in what they do.
Yeah, I totally agree.
The goal of this podcast is to, I suppose, help people organically learn what is involved in data development, and and SQL in particular, and to kind of help them make the right decisions along their journey, and to and have that start to that journey as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I think going back, I've heard of the T-shaped skill set as well, because I think one driver for that is the cloud ultimately. And the cloud's obviously not a new thing now, but you can no longer just be a data person that just opens up SSMS all day and that's you, right? Those days are gone. You have to know a bit about networking. You have to know a bit about security. Right, You've got to know these other things to a certain degree. You might not be a master of them, but you've got to have an understanding and awareness of them for sure.
Yeah, I mean, if you're just a SQL developer working on on-prem solutions and you end up moving to the cloud, starting to use the cloud, I feel like even just opening like the Azure, the Azure portal, you just get provided with a ton of stuff that you might not necessarily care about it, but clearly the fact that it's provided and then it needs to be managed, you need to know about it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's all part of the fun.
Exactly.
Okay, T-SQLT. I've already mentioned it's something that I'm definitely keen on learning more about myself. I don't really implement automated SQL tests in my own environments. Kind of the more integration tests, I suppose, on some of our surrounding systems and within our kind of data pipelines and things like that, to make sure that the integrations run well, rather than the systems within SQL and the processes. What I've done in the past is kind of, I suppose, build alerting processes within procedures and things like that that check the data as it goes along, rather than using kind of like a unit testing framework. But so can you just give a brief introduction to T-SQLT for those that don't know much about it?
Of course, yeah, sure. So T-SQLT is ultimately an open source framework to enable sort of writing T-SQL tests or unit tests, within T-SQL. So you're not having to learn a separate programming language. You can just use T-SQL to write these tests. And in my opinion, it's a fantastic tool, and it's saved me quite a few times in previous roles in terms of highlighting edge cases that you just wouldn't have found regarding normal smoke testing. So it's really, I'm a huge convert. I used to use T-SQLT quite heavily in a previous role, a couple of roles ago now. There's a possibility I might need to start using in the future. So what I thought I'd do is start blogging about it. Ultimately, I could refresh my memory around T-SQLT, create some blog posts, and sort of document my learning ultimately. Because I'm a firm believer of the old adage that the best way to learn is to teach something. It's a bit trite, but it's true, and I truly believe it. So yeah, I mean T-SQLT, I'm a huge convert, and it's really helped us out in previous roles.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, and I definitely agree with the best way to learn is to teach something.
Yeah,
I've been doing that a lot recently with AI and coding agents.
Yeah,
I've been doing a lot of research in my spare time to help improve mine and my team's workflows. Now and moving forward into the future. And it's one of the things that really sparked the idea behind SQL Squared. And obviously this is SQL Squared. It's meant the name is meant to signify that it's much more than SQL.
Mm-hmm.
Like data is much more than SQL.
Yeah.
And we talk around everything that surrounds that. And T-SQLT being one of those things today.
Yeah, I mean it's not loved by all, and I think there are various reasons for that. So I think there's a big investment at first, because ultimately every procedure you want covering unit tests for every procedure or every function in your system eventually, to get the true benefit from it. So it's quite a heavy investment initially, because obviously you'll be starting from scratch. But there are also tools you can use to sort of help you along that way and streamline that initial sort of input required. So, yeah, I mean, there are certainly the naysayers around T-SQLT, and I understand their points. But from my experience, it's been a really great, almost security blanket around you sometimes, because you will just be coding away, making a change to a stored procedure or a new piece of functionality for your product, etc. And then you think, yep, we're all good. And all of a sudden, some unit tests will start failing. And I always think back to almost like it was kind of my mentor in that role, really. And he'd written one of these unit tests. And I actually had the audacity to go to him saying, one of your unit tests is incorrect. And lo and behold, it was my code that was incorrect. But that was the time that really converted me, really, because I would never have found this edge case bug. And it's best we find it internally before, obviously the client or the customers do.
Well, yeah, that's the whole point in unit tests, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah. I mean, and it's something that I don't see often within the SQL world.
Oh, no, yeah, definitely.
I mean, your .NETers and etc., it's hand in hand, right? They're always writing associated unit tests for any of their code. It's just, or certainly the ones I've worked with, it's just one thing they do, but it's a very new thing still and rare thing I've found in on the SQL side of things.
Yeah. Well, it's one of the major improvements that I've actually seen from this whole AI agent stuff that I've been working on. It can write unit tests quite well. One of the improvements that I've seen in my workflow is the efficiency gain in writing unit tests is astronomical.
Yep.
And I've been testing it with T-SQLT as well in the background this month. Obviously, there's, you have to give it quite a lot of direction to know what you want to get out of it, but it can write large suites of tests across an entire database.
Oh, cool.
Saving you days of time. Obviously, it needs to always be checked and then tested itself. Because ultimately, how the system works and the AI doesn't. But the more instruction you give it and the more context you provide it, the better it'll do. Cool. I've been working with, developed my own MCP this month. Have you seen, there's quite a good open source community for MCPs now.
Right, okay.
Model context protocols. I should explain what that is. They're basically they're applications that sit between your AI agent and whatever other system you're working with, to give the AI agent much more context over exactly what you're doing, specifically what you're working with. Yeah. So it's not using a whole, just general archive of stuff to know what it's doing.
Yeah.
And you can do it to SQL Server. So I've been testing internally, basically writing a .NET based MCP server to run on Visual Studio Code, which sits within the agent, and it allows the agent to actually go and query your database or your data warehouse, and to figure out how the data pieces together to then understand what the flow of the data is. And I've seen success in writing unit tests in that regard, but also diagrams and documentation as well of your procedures and environment. I'd recommend having a look into it because it's been really powerful, really powerful.
That sounds cool.
Sticking with T-SQLT, I know you've mentioned, you just kind of mentioned it at a high level that it's unit tests are hard to implement at the start, and I totally agree with you, which is one of the reasons I've been looking at trying to implement all the AI stuff in here as well. But in general, once you've got T-SQLT set up, or whatever unit testing process you're using, are there some common challenges that people face that you could, when adopting these technologies, that you can help them overcome?
Yeah, initially it's an investment, and you can't get around that. Whether that's changing now a little bit based on what some of the things you just spoke to, but ultimately, at first it feels like yet another unnecessary task to do to get that Jira ticket over the line, right? Because in that particular role where I initially had the experience with it, you couldn't ultimately get your PR even approved and merged in until you had associated unit tests there, and it was all integrated within our CI/CD pipelines. Mm-hmm. So you had to have associated unit tests, and more importantly, they all had to pass before they would even allow the PR to get merged in. So initially, in my experience, development teams are normally super busy, super overburdened already, and getting pushed to deliver things as soon as possible. So the introduction of trying to suggest there's more things to do can sometimes be a challenging thing to announce. However, it's worth it, I believe, ultimately in the long run. And you can obviously take it small at first, piecemeal it, and just have smaller pieces of work every time you do it. But yeah, the ultimate thing for me was actually introducing that to the development teams and actually getting them on board, because they're busy already, right? They're really busy and overburdened. So yeah, that was the biggest challenge I think I faced at the time.
No, that's really good. That's really good to mention. My experience has actually been in the opposite direction.
Okay.
So I've tried to implement testing in many different forms over the years. I've gotten much more resistance from leadership rather than developers.
Oh, interesting.
I think I actually got a quote one time that somebody said of why do we need to test? It should just be right first time. But I think that's clearly the whole thing of it. It's rarely right first time.
Yeah.
And it's better to test and make sure that what you've written works as expected, and to push it live and figure out that something's gone wrong and cause downtime.
The problem only becomes more exacerbated, right? The larger your development teams as well, because you've got different people touching different bits of code, sometimes overlapping. So having that, that security blanket overlooking everything to make sure that the core functionality of those procedures or functions still remain intact, that's priceless. And it
even if it slows things down
so many times.
Yeah. Even if it slows time to delivery, like it's that security blanket is so worth it.
Yeah, and it was challenging. I can't deny it was challenging initially, because we were working in 2 weekly sprints. So every 2 weeks, big release of
I do the same.
a big release,
2 weeks.
big update out. So every 2 weeks there was this cadence that had to be met. We had to deliver certain features every 2 weeks, and things also have to remain functional and performant and secure. So it's really difficult balancing all those things at times together.
No, I agree. And I know we're kind of going to come on to Redgate in a second, but I know that Redgate have a test data manager tool as well, don't they?
Do, yeah.
Have you got any experience with that?
I've used the Redgate SQL test tool, which integrates beautifully with the T-SQLT framework.
Yeah.
And I've actually got some, the last blog post on the T-SQLT did actually cover a bit of that. But that tool is fantastic for automating some of the tasks and giving you a nice graphical user interface for actually seeing how many of your tests are passing, the percentage they're passing, the ratio, and more importantly, one of my favorite features of that tool is the code coverage. Shows you what code coverage you've got within each of your objects. So within your procedure, you can actually, it highlights the areas that are covered. And the amount of time you think, yeah, I've got that, ship it, it's done. You go and look at your code coverage and, you've only got 2/3 of the code covered. And that's, I love that feature of it because it's just so easy, right? It's there.
Yeah. I need to look into it again. Need to have a look. I played around with it a couple of years ago, but never kind of put anything into production or brought it through. All right then. Yeah, so talking about Redgate, congratulations on becoming a community ambassador.
Thank you.
What does being a community ambassador mean to you?
I think firstly, it's yet another platform for me to be able to interact and share ideas and share things with the community. I think it's a great avenue to be able to do that. And it's, in the grand scheme of things, it's another platform for me to be able to speak to people and make new connections, make new data friends, and just all of that stuff really. I'm so excited, and it was a real surprise and a real treat, but I've been quite vocal in my love for Redgate tools over the years because it's been such a time saver for me. So over the years, whether that's SQL prompt, whether that's SQL monitor monitoring all your databases, whether that's Redgate SQL test, it's just been, I love their tools. And I think if you've worked in SQL or databases for a while now, you've had some exposure to them. And there's a reason for that,
who Redgate are.
Yeah.
I just think the even the Redgate community in itself, which obviously is kind of a subset of the data community, is thriving. It's great. They do a good job over there. And every time I see Redgate at a conference or an event, everybody's always kind of flocked around their booth. They're always, really, really friendly guys. From my experience with working with them recently, like so supportive as well.
Yeah, very much so. Great company. And I think they're advocates as well. So your Steve Jones, your Kellen Gorman, your Grant Fritchie, they're amazing. And I will always try and attend their talks if I'm at a session they're speaking, because there's a reason they've been chosen for those roles, and it shows, right? It shows.
Yeah.
They've got such a vast amount of experience. It's incredible.
How do you see yourself contributing?
Well, firstly, I think I'm going to be able to leverage that platform, and whether that's blogging. So I'm going to be able to on my own platform, I'm going to be able to show how some of their tools have actually helped me over the years. And rather than just saying these tools are great, actually give examples.
Reasons why and examples. And
exactly. I mean, there are aspects of Redgate SQL prompt, for example, that I use now. And if I don't have that tool available to use, I feel almost lost because you get that used to using these shortcuts and various aspects. So the blogging's going to certainly contribute to that. The events and conferences, Redgate Summit conferences are some of my favourites now, just for the diverse amount of topics that are on show, but obviously all centred around the data platform. So yeah, and continue to build that online presence ultimately. So it was a real surprise and a real treat. Really excited about it.
Good. I've listened to a few of the Simple Talk episodes as well. Kind of got a bit of a similar format to this. Hopefully, I hope to be on that one day, I think, and try and get other community ambassadors involved in SQL Squared. I think we can be a really good partnership to work together. Something that I'm definitely working towards.
And quite frankly, anywhere I can be on a list on the same sort of, alongside the likes of Aaron Bertrand and Ola Hallengren, then, I'm happy. I don't know if it's deserved, but I'm taking it.
Yeah, you'll take it. I'd take it as well. I suppose for the audience out there, Lee and I have just talked about a few of the Redgate tools and the Redgate community in general. Totally advocate what they're doing, and I'll put a few links to their blog and podcasts in the description below. And if you have any questions or want to find out more, or want to just connect with me and Lee, please message me at mailbag@sqlsquared.co.uk, and more than happy to answer your questions and have a chat and get in touch and link you with people to learn more and other resources, especially Lee's blog on T-SQLT at the moment.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, just a quick interlude from me. I hope you're enjoying the podcast so far. If you are, please consider leaving a like and subscribing. It greatly helps me reach a wider audience, and you get notified of episodes as soon as they are released. Also, if you're a data and AI professional with insights to share, please get in touch. I'd love to have you on the show. Head over to the SQL Squared website for more, and if you have any questions for me, I would be happy to answer. Leave a comment or email me on mailbag@sqlsquared.co.uk. Back to the show. So giving back to the community then, we've mentioned a couple of bits already about what you want to do, working with the Redgate community, and what your goals are for this year. I know very specifically we've got SQLBits happening in June. Yep. Unfortunately, I am gutted that I can't go.
Oh no!
But also very excited to be in Bordeaux for the wine festival.
Oh, okay. That's a very strong second place.
Yeah. I love SQLBits as a conference. It's great, and it's an amazing place to network, find out about new tools, and just learn a load of new things. I always walk away, learning a ton from that conference.
Same.
Normally I go to the free day, but last year I was lucky enough to go to one of the paid days as well. But yeah, some of the talks are in depth. I know they've got the agenda out at the moment, but I haven't looked through it because obviously I know that I can't go.
Yeah.
But you mentioned that you're SQLBits helper this year.
I am, and I'm very excited. It's the first time I've ever done it, so it's going to be an experience for sure. I almost was a helper in 2024, but I got ill literally the day before, so I was gutted. So this year,
you didn't end up going to the conference at all.
Yeah, exactly. So this year, I'm super excited to be a helper and wear one of those famous orange T-shirts and helping out and moderating some sessions. I'm really excited. I'm going for 2 days as a helper. I have been to Bits numerous times, and I've also attended one of the paid training days before. I attended one of Eric Darling's SQL performance days in Manchester. Can't remember what year it was in Manchester, but a few years ago, it might have been 2019 actually, all the way back then. So, and that was fantastic, obviously, and hurt my head, a lot of the topics that have been discussed. But yeah, can't wait, really excited. And it's just another one of those avenues about really trying to give back to a community that's just supported me, given me so much over the years.
Well, that's, being a helper at a conference is one of the best ways to do it. Like it's such a, I suppose I always see people doing it, and it's kind of such a selfless thing that they're doing because go into it as a helper in certain sessions. I assume you get provided sessions rather than choosing sessions, or do you get to choose sessions as a helper?
Good question, because I never actually got that far on my previous attempt to be a helper. So,
All right. So I'm guessing so you haven't done it for this year yet. So it probably
no.
happens when you get to the
So
conference.
I believe that the training days, those are allocated at the time, sort of on the day, depending on
Okay.
how much resource they've got available and all those
Fair
sort of factors they have to consider. So we've got some catch-up calls soon regarding the helper team. So I'm sure we'll find out more information then. So who knows?
Great. Yeah, because I can imagine. Thought about trying to do it in the past, but going to the talks that I want to go to is the reason, I suppose, that I go to the conference.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think I might do it sometime in the future, but definitely, want to continue learning.
Yep.
Continue discovering new products. Like I said about the AI agent stuff earlier. I just love working with the newest stuff, the newest tech, and I'm always trying to bring it into my workflow and change things. There's I might have mentioned it on the podcast before, but I think my favorite word is innovation. And I can't. I'm always trying to innovate, and sometimes you get change fatigue with it if you do it too much.
For sure.
And sometimes, especially in the world of business, you've got to be careful about the things that you innovate on and choose wisely what you're trying to do. I've recently actually had a process where we've been doing bit of a migration of a suite of tools, and you get the opportunity to change and innovate on things during a migration process. And we had people really bought in. We had a load of ideas of things to change and improvements to make, but we didn't have a lot of time to do the migration and a lot of resource, and so we had to kind of balance.
Exactly, that's the key word. That's what was screaming in my head then when you were talking about it's a balance, right? Because you can leverage new tools, new processes to help you along this journey, but also there's a debt to that as well, right?
Yeah,
so
they can be.
Sometimes the biggest thing you've got to adhere to is a timeline. In my experience with these sort of larger projects, and there's always a deadline.
Yeah.
And there probably should be, really, because they could go on forever, right? So it's a balance, because I've been in similar situations where working in agile environments, you do have to be open to flipping the script a bit and coming at things from a completely different angle. You have to sometimes, just to get over the line.
Yeah.
But also, there's a risk involved there. So balance for sure.
Yeah, well, I've definitely, I've come across integrations and processes within data warehouses in the past where people clearly didn't take that step.
Yeah.
And they built new processes with new applications using old kind of models and ways of working, and you end up not integrating with stuff correctly. Like
exactly.
One of the examples I've got is the difference between like SOAP APIs and REST APIs. People developing, unfortunately, actually the other way around, going developing on a SOAP process rather than a REST process, but they were very used to the REST process. And the way that you interface with SOAP APIs can be very, very different. And if you use the same philosophy, I suppose, the same way of developing interfaces with those types of APIs, it doesn't necessarily work.
It's so true.
Even though they're
so true.
Theoretically the same thing, you are just interfacing with stuff, and
you've made me think of something from my experience and my world in terms of migrating clients and getting workloads into the cloud. A common pattern I've seen is something I've termed in the past of on-premise in the cloud, where because it's a known quantity, people want, there's this often a want to take those same functionality, the same technologies, the same constructs of those technologies, and just plonk them into the cloud. And there you go, which is obviously getting you into the cloud, but you're not making the most of those cloud native technologies, and you are instantly limiting yourself from what you can actually do in the cloud.
It has to act as a bridge. Yeah. Huh? I said it has to act as a bridge, I suppose. Yep, exactly. Like, it's one of the reasons I loved managed instance. I found it so much easier to migrate from an old kind of VM hosted on-premise solution to a managed instance, which obviously is a managed service within Azure. And there were changes obviously that needed to get made as part of that migration process. However, it was more seamless than using other technologies, and it allowed us to move into that managed environment rather than having on-premise in the cloud.
Yeah, I mean, definitely +1 for managed instances. Yeah. I know we spoke about this before, but I'm a huge fan, and we're actually early adopters at the time when their phase came out.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of problems with them because in those days things were changing on a daily basis. Yeah. So I remember when you first spun up a managed instance, you couldn't even choose the default collation on them. You were just given a specific collation. So then we had to get our development teams to remove all these hard-coded, I know, don't shoot me, but there were hard-coded collations within our code. We had to get them to change all of those, and then 2 weeks later, all of a sudden you could change a collation. So then that was technically, wasted effort from the development teams, but that's just the price you pay being on new tech, right?
Yeah, that's one of the one of the downsides of it. I mean, we have not even tried to adopt Fabric yet.
Okay.
Not even really considering it. This point.
It's a hot potato at the moment.
Yeah.
Right?
I hear too many bad things.
Shit, David, about Fabric because.
No, I mean, I'm going 10th of June. ANS have a Fabric in a Day workshop.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So I'm taking a few of my members of my team to that.
Yeah.
It was literally a free event. I was speaking to our Microsoft account managers, and they put us onto it. Microsoft are paying for it, which is great. So hopefully, next podcast I do, I'll have a little bit more knowledge in the Fabric space. But I hear so many bad things about it. There was actually a post that Brent Ozar put up on LinkedIn.
I've got a feeling I know exactly which one you're on about.
The one that was everything was down.
Yeah,
and he just in a one-liner, just I suppose slagged off Fabric a bit.
Yeah,
in a kind of a perfect way, but
there's two very distinct parties I see on certainly LinkedIn around Fabric at the moment. So it's interesting, and I'm keen to see how it all pans out with the whole Fabric tool.
I mean, it's an exciting tool. What I've seen that it can do is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of, and bringing everything into one solution.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, I don't know if it's daily at the moment, but when I looked at it about a year ago now, I think it was actually last September, I looked at it in a bit more detail. It was, changes were daily. There was just too much going on to be able to, I suppose, sell the moving our production systems to the business into that product. There's a balance. We've already mentioned the balance, but definitely a balance between risk and reward.
There is,
with
for
these
sure.
new technologies,
and that's precisely that's the situation we were in at the time with the managed instance. We were partnering with Microsoft, and they were keen to get us on their platform, their new shiny platform as they were at the time. Show my age again. But they were new, shiny, and they were almost like-for-like compatibility. I'm going to use some quotes there for obvious reasons, but they were as close, as we had at the time. And there were things, like you said with Fabric, that things can change continually, and that's difficult to manage in a professional environment where things have to be signed off and risk assessed and change controlled and all that thing, the sort of thing. So it's a really hard sell to get the shiny new stuff sometimes.
No, I agree. And I suppose that takes us on to one of our last talking points of the future of data.
Yeah.
I suppose Fabric can be one of them, but are there any kind of trends going on at the moment that you're really excited about?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, my eyes were always going to be around the data platform,
Oh yeah.
Typically databases in general. So the one thing I'm fascinated about is the rising popularity in Postgres at the moment. The rise is something actually quite astronomical and special, and I'm really interested to see just how far it goes, because more and more people are switching, or certainly new products, new environments they're spinning up. They are looking towards database technology such as Postgres now. And the one thing that stuck me, going back to Redgate Summit again, I watched a session by Grant Fritchie talking about Postgres. And it really piqued my interest in some of the things the platform can do. And I'm a complete novice, obviously, with that platform, because I've never had any real world sort of experience in a professional capacity.
I'm in the same boat.
But I'm keen to change that in the future, because it's really interesting to me, and some of the things that from a high level I've heard about it can do, I'm really interested, and it sounds really exciting. So I'm just really keen to see where that whole trend goes. And I don't even think you can call it a trend now, just because it's had such a rise for such a long time.
Yeah, it has been around for a while.
Yeah, but it's really starting to become a talking point in the data world, which is always cool, right? I always like new things and new ways of doing things and new products and shiny new things, basically. So yeah, I'm really interested in that.
One of the things I've been seeing a lot more about recently in the same boat is BigQuery. It's BigQuery, isn't it? The Google one.
Yeah.
A lot. I've seen a lot of adoption for the Google Cloud Platform in the last couple of years, especially within smaller companies.
Right.
That or startup environments, building into the Google ecosystem. Not really sure where where Azure fits in, in the future, because I think you've got AWS, which I think is used, interchangeably with Azure with much larger companies. But the take up on the Google Cloud Platform has been quite stark, to the same sort of rise that you're mentioning with Postgres, and the services that Google are offering on their cloud platform now associated with data processes and development and architectures. It's coming a long way, and they seem to be quite far at the forefront of new technology.
Right. Okay.
In that regard.
Yeah.
And then, especially with AI as well, I use Gemini for everything.
Okay.
I'm not using Claude. I'm not using ChatGPT or any of those. Gemini for me has just outperformed all of the rest of them. I've been playing around with Google Cloud myself. I said for a couple of months now. Just with SQL Squared and the hosting of certain products and processes, and the way Gemini is built into that system as well. I know Copilot is built into Azure.
Yeah,
and they've been doing a lot with that recently. But I just feel like the modern feel and that, I suppose, that innovation that Google are pushing forward within the data space on their platforms has been quite impressive over the recent years.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'd say the Google side of the cloud world is probably the area, well, not probably, it's certainly the area I've had the least exposure to in terms of coming across it in various roles. So Azure is my safe, happy place. I'm never going to deny that. I know Azure very well now, and I feel very at ease and comfort in it. But AWS is obviously one of the biggest ones out there now, I believe, in terms of uptake.
AWS is huge.
Just sheer numbers. And I think it was quite clear to see that when I attended the AWS Summit not long ago in London. It was a whole extra level of investment available to that business, right? And just the sheer size, scale, and the amount of things that were going on in that event was something quite special to see in real life. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's an area where I feel like Azure is falling behind a little bit. I feel in the community and things that I'm kind of seeing online, I'm just seeing much more innovation within the AWS and Google space rather than the Microsoft space. Although Microsoft Build was the other week, and the conference that they had. I watched that, and that was very, very promising. You know, lots and lots of new features, especially coming to the Office suite, and to help businesses in general. Whereas Google I/O, very, very impressive, much more focused on like the consumer.
Okay.
You know, rather and developers rather than businesses.
Yeah.
So the different platforms and companies are clearly taking different approaches.
Yeah. And I think these things are cyclical, right? I mean, I know Microsoft's having quite a transformation of a transformative time at the moment in terms of how it's approaching various things and where its focus appears to be. And I think these things will just go in cycles and eventually course correct. And, you know, it's just how these things seem to work in my experience.
You need to wait for the next trend.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I do think, you know, I'm very, a lot of people, especially developers, can be, you get opposite ends of the seesaw, I suppose. Some are very, very excited by AI and what it can provide and do, and I'm on that side.
Yeah. So,
but others can be very, very skeptical. You know, I have got a couple of people in my team that, you know, are a bit worried about it, to be honest, and resistant to pick it up.
And I think it's natural. Because you only have to open any social media around the tech community at the moment, and it's the number one thing everyone's talking about. And I think the key thing is to embrace it ultimately. And I think certain roles are obviously going to evolve and change with the advent of AI. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
But one thing that I'm keen on focusing on is abstracting myself out of the code almost, because I used to consider myself quite a lover of coding, but those days are slowly going because they will always outperform most of us in terms of being able to just generate code quickly. You'll always obviously need that expert eye over the code to definitely check everything is right, because the one thing that AI cannot do is take in and understand business requirements and translate that into the tech. I think that's where our skills need to flourish really now in terms of the actual bare bones tech. I think it's about interpreting business goals, business needs into the tech. I think that's where our skills need to evolve into more.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
But yeah, it's a worrying time for a lot of people, I believe, at the moment. I read a lot of, you know, everything's doomed and things like that. It's natural. It's natural, right?
It's a difficult thing to understand as well. Like I'm not gonna pretend to understand how it works in the background. But you know, you hear things of like I can't remember who it was. Some US audit process that went on about over Anthropic and OpenAI a few weeks ago, and the output of it was literally the people that are working on it don't even understand how it works.
Okay.
And so that you know, words like that become you know, a little bit worrying. But people I think are afraid to adopt stuff that they don't necessarily understand. And I think this whole AI thing is probably the most complex new technology that has probably ever come out and hit the world by storm.
I agree. And the security ramifications are...
security is a big thing.
Are obviously, understandably and rightly so, a hot topic around AI as well.
Yeah, I mentioned the model context protocols earlier and linking it to SQL Server. If you know, the audience, people out there, people listening to this, if you start working with these technologies, you've got to have your own AI subscription self-hosted in your tenant. If you're using Azure, it might not seem worth for a business to pay for Copilot when everyone just gets it anyway, but you can't link these openly available AI endpoints to your systems using MCPs. I mean, you can. Technically you can, but you shouldn't, because it gives you a window into your data warehouse and your processes. But if you have your own, I suppose, self-hosted tenant and you pay for that yourself in the cloud, then that window opens to you. And it was the reason I've started working with the MCP stuff and doing proof of concepts on it, because I think the context that you can provide these things it's just I found to be insanely powerful, much more powerful than I thought it was going to be to begin with. But the security aspect is a huge talking point. The business that I work for at the moment, they looked at purchasing Copilot and they decided not to do it. Like, it didn't provide them enough value for the cost at the time. But when you've got these additional technologies and these additional layers on top, it then reaches a new height. But a lot of people, because it's a very, very new technology, a lot of people don't know about them, don't know about the new things coming out, because it's coming out at such a fast rate. We've talked about change on a daily basis with your managed instance and things like that. This is definitely that.
Yes, for sure.
But yeah. I think that's all of our talking points that we've gone through. Thank you so much, Lee.
Thank you
for sharing your insights. I hope your goals of getting much more involved with the community go really well this year. It's been great chatting with you, and I look forward to seeing your Finding Data Friends podcast episode.
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll be a very interesting conversation to listen to.
Thank you very much.
Good. And thank you all for tuning in. Please, if you enjoyed the episode, like the video, subscribe to the channel to hear more about the world of data and AI. And I'll see you next month with episode 5. Cheers, Lee. Thank you.
Thank you.